It's Tuesday night, and you know what that means. Hello, I'm Luke Michael Howard, clinical hypnotist and owner of Lukenosis Hypnosis, here with another Facebook Live. So this one is entitled, Is it a disease or an addiction? So I upset some people on Facebook yesterday. See, I went on to some various forums for addiction, be that NA, Narcotics Anonymous, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and various opiates and other kind of Facebook groups specializing in having people who have that issue, who have that problem, who are suffering with that specific drug, frequent. And I posted something on there, and what I posted was looking for some people to interview for an upcoming addiction research project that I'm working on. It's late. Which is true. So nothing to sell other than me, I guess, but really it's a research project because, as you know, I specialize in working with people with all forms of addiction, and I like to find out how their psychology is, and it helps me better craft my message and the stuff that I put together on addictions. It helps me to stay up to date with it, how people who are suffering with addictions, where their mind's at, what their real issues are, how they're suffering, so it can help me better understand the issue and better tailor my services to help these people. So that's why I did it. Go on these random Facebook groups and put on, looking to interview some people for an upcoming research project on addiction. If you're interested, PM me, personal message me. So it's very interesting. Some people will personal message me, which is great. It's what I asked them to do for a 10-minute interview that would be conducted over the next couple of days. But some people just comment, hey, message me. They didn't read the message that said PM me, personal message me, because I've had about 107 and counting people have put their hand up and say, hey, interview me, which those people will be being interviewed over the next couple of days. But when people leave the message, no, you message me or tell me more information. No. That's all going to be discussed on the call. Nevertheless, some people got upset on these forums. And what I initially thought, the reason I thought they got upset is I thought that they thought, the moderators of these groups, that I was actually trying to sell something. I got nothing to sell. I'm just trying to understand the issue better so I can be better at helping people with addictions. Nothing to sell. So I thought, but maybe they got their wires crossed and they figure I'm trying to sell something. That's why they're upset. That wasn't why they were upset. Some small percent, but some people were angry in these groups. Hey Amanda, how are you? If you're watching, give me a wave, give me a thumbs up, or say hi underneath. Why some of these people were upset with me at these groups is because I called it an addiction and not a disease. So my initial reaction was to be, what the hell, why are you getting so upset, bent out of shape about this? It's just a term. But rather than do that, what intelligent people do is I hold up the two things, the two opposing views of addiction and disease. Right? I hold them both up and I look at them, and rather than get angry or get my back up, so to speak, I looked at it and well, I've always come at this from the angle of an addiction, whether that be to a narcotic, whether that be drinking, cigarettes, sugar, sex, porn, opiates, whatever it may be, medication. I've always come at the angle that it's an addiction, right? But then I realised some people see it as a disease. And I thought, well, regardless of, instead of just judging this with my past biases, let's look at where they could be coming at. Now, obviously, a lot of these people on these groups, unfortunately, don't have the same intelligence to hold up both the concept of addiction and both the concept of disease and really challenge what they think it is. But I said, you know what? I believe this is an addiction. I'll tell you why a little bit later on as we go on this. But I'm like, but let me see where they could be coming at believing this is a disease. Okay? But that's why people got really upset with me, is because I'm looking to interview people about addiction, and I didn't put looking to interview people with disease. Now, understand this before I continue. I've worked with many, many thousands of people to help them overcome addiction over the last 21, 22 years now, a whole shitload of people. So I know know what I'm doing, and I'm always updating myself on this, where people are coming from and wanting to understand. My heart goes out to people who are suffering, who have put their hand up and say, I need some help. That's when I come in and help them. So, my heart goes out to these people, and I desperately want to help them if they've put their hand up and say they want help. So there's certainly no judgment coming from me if someone's addicted to cocaine, alcohol, heroin, opiates, medication, sex, porn, internet. We've all got our addictions. It's just not all addictions are created equally, and not all addictions are going to kill us very, very soon. Okay, so understand that's where I'm coming from a place of genuinely want to help these people. But I looked at addiction and I looked at disease, and I held them both up. And if you look at half the doctors, half the psychiatrists out there, half of them will have a good case of why it's a disease or dis-ease. Half of them will have a good case of why it's an addiction, right? These are just words, okay? Here's where I come in as a hypnotist, as a linguist, someone that helps people to understand their own language, because your language is representing, hey Carl, how are you? Your language is directly interfacing with the person or people in front of you, your internal lived experience, what's going on inside. So we must be careful of the language we use to describe our experience to other people and to ourselves, okay? So half the people say it's an addiction, whatever it is. Too much drugs, too much booze, too much sex, too much porn. The other half will say it's a disease, okay? Here's how I look at it. If I have cancer, it's a disease. Now, yes, there are some things I can do about it in the physical world, like chemotherapy, like radiotherapy. Yes, there's some psychological things I could do to help to deal with the emotion. But I've got cancer. They can open me up, they can see it. It's a disease. They didn't ask for it. It wasn't because I was doing something stupid that I knew eventually would cause me cancer, although some people do, like smoking. But there's a lot of people that just get cancer, all right? Another example of this is how I regard it as a disease, a physical disease. Another example is COVID-19, the coronavirus. I'm sure there isn't many people that say, one day they wake up, they've got coronavirus, they didn't make a decision to have it. They weren't necessarily, I understand some people are, going out there, allowing people to spit on them, to spew on them, and not respecting boundaries and 6 feet of distance and all that stuff. I understand some people are, but vast majority of people, I think in the Western world, will respect that on some level, yet they get COVID-19. I certainly didn't ever want to have a cold or a flu, but I've got cold or flus in my life. And when I got them, it's not something I asked for. It wasn't that I was using other people's handkerchiefs or disgusting things like that to give myself a cold or a flu. But I just got it. And then, I got rid of it at some point. Okay. So disease often just happens to us. Sometimes people are irresponsible, but there are some people it just happens to. Some people live their life and they're totally healthy, and in one day they get cancer and they die. All right, there's a lot of people out, which is heartbreaking, but it is what it is, right? Where I just call it addiction is this: there's no reason for me to use cocaine, but I use cocaine. I've made a conscious decision to use cocaine. There has not been a gun to my head, and somebody saying, "I'm going to kill you or your family if you don't use this." Okay, there may be some peer pressure, understandably. I'm not saying that, all right? However, you make a conscious choice to use cocaine. Not just picking on cocaine addicts here. It's just a metaphor, folks, before you get upset. And then you use cocaine again and again and again and again. This is not a disease. You're not born with this. It didn't just happen one day accidentally. You chose to do it unless, again, gun to your head, all right? Another example is the heroin addict who uses heroin. Unless, here's the caveat, unless their mother was using heroin, and we've heard of heroin babies, and the babies can get addicted to heroin. I understand that. That caveat aside, those babies aside, that's an awful way to be brought into the world. My heart goes out to them. But that caveat aside, unless there's a gun to your head, you use heroin. For whatever reason, unless there's a gun to your head, you use it. You make a choice, all right? And then you choose to use it again and again. So eventually you don't feel it's a conscious choice because you feel the need to use it. But initially it was a choice. People don't necessarily have the choice to get cancer. People don't necessarily have the choice to get AIDS. People don't necessarily have the choice to get COVID-19. Yes, there's certain things they can do to protect themselves, but it's never bulletproof. But unless there's a gun to your head, you made a choice. And remember, this isn't about judgment, folks. It's not about judgment. One day you made a decision. You learned later it was a bad decision. If you put your hand up and you say, hey, I want to clean this up, want to get help, want to go into recovery, I understand that. This is why I'm here to help. Hey, if you just joined us, like Shauna, say hi. Give me a wave, give me a thumbs up. If you've got any questions, you can put it underneath. And I understand, I'm going to say it again, folks, if you just joined us. This isn't a judgment, because again, most of my career over the last 21, 22 years has been helping people, thousands of people with addiction, all right? When people hold their hand up and say, I need help, that's where I come in. It's certainly not a judgment. But we're talking about the terms disease versus addiction. Again, half the doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, research experts, half will say this is an addiction. The reason you keep using is it's an addiction. The other half will say it's a disease, you were born with this. Well, let me tell you a story, folks. My dad's an alcoholic. He would never class himself as an alcoholic. He drinks every night. Every night. And I'd see my dad 3-4 nights a week. And he'd be drinking Bacardi and Coke. Now, he's a product of the 40s, the 50s, the 60s growing up. He would not class himself as an alcoholic. Although he's had 3 heart attacks, I believe 3 or 4 strokes, and had a triple bypass surgery. He can barely walk. He would not class himself as an alcoholic. I was around my dad a lot before I moved to Canada, certainly between age 0 and 30. I've drank less than 5 times in my life before the age of 20. Just didn't like the taste of it, stopped. Now, if I subscribed to the theory that it's a disease, whoa, I'm an alcoholic because my dad drinks, then I should be a fucking alcoholic as well, shouldn't I? My little sister, Bonnie, she should be an alcoholic as well. I think she's drank less than me in her life. My mum should probably be an alcoholic as well because she's around my dad. Well, she was a lot of the time. She doesn't drink. Again, it's not about judgment, folks. All right, people do what they do. It's about getting help. I understand that. But I don't subscribe to this bullshit again unless it's a crack baby or certain drugs that the mother is digesting while the child is ovulating and in the trimesters before it's born that can get into the child's body and very DNA. Not talking about that. That's very unfortunate. It's really, really unfortunate. And again, my heart goes out to that. But by using the theory it's a disease, I should fucking be an alcoholic by now. Drank less than 5 times in my life. My sister should be an alcoholic. Drank less than me. My mum should probably be an alcoholic. Spent more time with my dad. Doesn't drink at all. Again, it's not a judgment at all. People do what they do. But when they need help, that's where I come in. But it's about this thing about a disease or you're born with it. You're not born an alcoholic, folks. Occasionally you can be born as a heroin baby, possibly if the mother's digesting crack cocaine as well. There's some studies that show that. That aside, you don't come out craving cigarettes when you're born, all right? Oh, my mum smokes, that's why I smoke, it's in the DNA. No, it's not. No, it's not, because my dad smoked, but still smokes about 50 cigarettes a day, so I should smoke. I've never smoked, except for one cigar once from this girl, hot girl, who bought me a cigar from Cuba and dropped it on the floor and then he set fire to my apartment about 20 years ago. But that's a story for another day. You're not born an alcoholic, all right? You're not born a smoker. You're not born addicted to sugar. With a couple of exceptions of those drug cases I mentioned, you're not born addicted to drugs. At some point, you make a choice to use, unless there's a gun to your head, in which I understand. There's a gun to your head and someone says, if you don't do this drug now, I'm going to kill you. Perhaps before the drug does. Or I'm going to kill your family. And those exceptions, those very rare exceptions, I've never ever met those people in thousands of cases, by the way. In those rare exceptions, you make a choice. It may be peer pressure, whatever, but you make a choice to do it. And as you look back later on, you probably wish you could go back and say, I wish I could go back to that first time and say no to that cigarette, no to that cocaine, no to that first drink, no to those opiates. But you didn't. It's not about beating yourself up about it. I'm not saying that. But you made a choice. And every time you use a drug, you make a choice. Now, I understand, say for the heroin addict that I treat quite a few, I understand that if they don't do heroin, and in a small percentage of people that I've seen, if they don't come off of it very, very slowly or with another drug, it can be very dangerous. This is not all heroin addicts. It's not even a huge percent, but there is a percentage of heroin addicts like that, in which case, with all this advice, you must consult your doctor first. It's utmost important, and that goes without saying, because I imagine you're all intelligent people. But here's what happens with the vast majority of heroin addicts that I've worked with. And I use heroin because it's the big scary one, isn't it? It's the one that said, if you're going to get addicted to any drug, don't let it be heroin. That's the one that'll really fuck you up. Here's what happens with most heroin addicts that I've seen. They come off of heroin addict. They've checked with their doctor before that it's okay to do this. And they get the sweats. They get the shakes. They feel their emotions are up and down, up the yazoo for about a week, sometimes maximum 2 weeks. They vomit a lot. Excuse my language, folks. Maybe it's a bit late. They shit themselves. They look like a scene from The Exorcist if you see them as they're going through withdrawals. But you know, within a week, 2 weeks max, they're done. It's out of their system. Yeah, it was hell. It's horrendous for a week, maximum 2. But then it's done. If it was truly addictive, they'd still need to do it after that point. If it was a disease, it wouldn't matter that they didn't go a couple of weeks. It would still be there. It's like cancer. You don't wake up and do a bunch of meditation and sometimes it's just gone. It's there and you deal with it. Yes, sometimes there are things you can do to aid that. And some people do heal up. I understand that. I appreciate that. That does happen with some people. That, however, if we chain you to a bed for 2 weeks and you had cancer, the odds of it just disappearing in and of itself are probably quite low. For the heroin addict, of the addiction being gone, the physicality of it's gone within 2 weeks maximum. Might be some emotions that you need to clean up around it, the reasons you used it for the first place. They may need to be cleared up, but the actual physical addiction is gone. I look at this as well. I look at it with my clients, right? Disease means you've got no choice. You've got cancer, you've got AIDS, you've got COVID-19. You're fucked. Maybe they'll have an antidote for it, but right now you're fucked. That's disease. Half the doctors, scientists, researchers will say that. I always look to give to my clients for want of a better word, the suggestions that will most empower them. The other suggestions is an addiction. It's something you do that you don't feel that you have any conscious control of stopping it at this moment, but you did at some point make a conscious decision to use it, so you can make a conscious and unconscious decision to not use it anymore and deal with all the emotions that are underneath that are making it very difficult for you to stop. Addiction. Addiction in most people's minds, and certainly with me, means that you've got a choice, and you do have a choice, and there's more stuff and there's more hope. And there's a way out of it, because there is. Disease? Hey, you're fucked. You got a disease. You got heart disease. You're fucked. You might not die tomorrow, you might not die next year, but you're fucked. You got a disease, right? Can't do anything about it. Addiction, all right, you started to do something that was silly, that's now hurting you. At the time, maybe you didn't realise, but now you do. And if you could go back in a time machine and correct it, you probably would, but they don't really exist. Well, unless you work with me and they kind of exist. Addiction. Addiction gives you more control of I'm drinking too much, I can stop. It's an addiction. It's just a behaviour that's gone haywire. I'm drugging too much. All right, it's a decision I made, even though I don't feel that I've got a choice of it right now, because all the emotions underneath and the recovery and the detoxing and the shaking in my body and the profuse sweating and the shitting and vomiting, it's unpleasant. It's unpleasant going through a detox with stuff like crystal meth and heroin. I've seen it firsthand. Very unpleasant. Not nice. Because you know what happens for most people, right? After a couple of weeks, is it's gone. A couple of weeks is absolutely maximum. For a lot of people, it's a week. With heroin, of not using, it's gone from their system. Now again, to use the analogy, if it was cancer or COVID-19, if we just tied you to a bed and say, all right, in 2 weeks, we'll check you for your cancer, your COVID-19, no antidote, and if it was just tying you to the bed, and we'll check back with you in a couple of weeks to see if it's gone. I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I'd probably bet quite heavily that whatever that disease was, that condition that you had, cancer, AIDS, COVID-19, would probably still be there if all we did was tie you to a bed and did nothing else. However, the physical addiction, for most people, most of the time, even a big scary one like heroin would be gone for most people, most of the time. So I call it an addiction. That doesn't mean I'm discounting your experience. Absolutely not. It doesn't mean that I'm saying you're not suffering or struggling. Some people think that when I say it's an addiction, not disease, I'm discounting their emotions. Oh, no, 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 no. I've worked with one-on-one more people than you could ever imagine around addiction. Everything from sugar to nicotine to cocaine to heroin to crystal meth to opiates to emotional things and physical things like porn, internet, toxic relationships, checking their cell phone all the time, high-end, low-end, whatever it is, whatever your addiction is, I get it's a big thing to you. So I'm absolutely not discounting your feelings or what you're going through when you're brave enough to put your hand up and say, I want to stop. I acknowledge it. I salute you for putting your hand up and saying, I need some help and I'm ready to stop. I get what you're going through as much as I can through working with thousands and thousands of people with addictions over the last 22 years. So I absolutely understand. I'm not discounting you're struggling. I'm not discounting you're feeling stuck. I'm not discounting your emotions in any way, shape or form. I'm just simply saying, disease keeps you stuck. You're fucked. You ain't ever moving forward. So why bother? Addiction. All right. This is not nice. Wish it weren't here, but wishing it away ain't going to work. So how can I clear this up? The emotions around it, the beliefs around it, so I don't do that behavior anymore and get connection with my higher power, if you believe in such a thing, certainly with yourself and significant others. On the side of the coin that says addiction, you have a choice. You have a chance at turning this around. And I've seen it thousands and thousands of times. Disease? You're fucked. It's a dead-end street. Remember, I'm a hypnotist. The disease is a suggestion that it's terminal. There's nothing you can do about it. You're always going to have the disease. It keeps you stuck. Stuck in your addiction, stuck in your struggling, stuck in your pain. My job is to help people become unstuck. When they put their hand up and say, I'm struggling, Luke, I'm suffering, I'm struggling, I'm stuck. I don't know a way out of my addiction. But I know I better fucking find one real quick because it's robbing me of my life. It's robbing my wife of her husband. It's robbing my child of her father. It's robbing the world of me. I need some help. Put their hand up. I'm all about helping those people. I appreciate the struggles. Seen it a lot of times. They helped a lot of people. I commend you for that. Disease keeps you stuck. Whether it's linguistically correct or not, probably in our lifetime, still be a fight. 50% of the doctors, surgeons, theory writers, psychiatrists, researchers will say, yeah, it's a disease. The other half will have the evidence that says, well, no, it's an addiction. You're not born with it. All I'm simply saying, folks, disease keeps you stuck, you're fucked. Terminal, dead end street, can't change it. Why bother eating healthy, being healthy, getting sunlight, overcoming it? I'm fucked, I've got this disease, haven't I? I've got the disease, can't do anything about it. Addiction, all right. Been doing this thing, it's not a nice label, been doing this thing for a while and I feel that it's got control of me and I want to stop. And I want to stop, but I need some help. I might have tried other things before that were difficult, but I'm willing to give it another shot because many, many other people have overcome the addiction. And you know what? A disease oftentimes is an addiction of the mind, all right? Not discounting physical things about it as well. But yes, that's where I would land on the argument, is it's a disease. Addiction is addiction is an addiction. You're using too much of the drug of choice. It's an addiction. It's something you're doing, even though you don't feel you have choice. I understand when you're jonesing for your drug of choice, you don't feel you have a choice. I understand it. Seen it thousands of times in the darkest places imaginable. Seen it, all right? I understand where you're coming from. But disease, terminal, don't have a choice. Why even bother getting out? I'm fucked. This doesn't help you, folks. The disease model doesn't help you. And all these two concepts are concepts, are models. Disease don't help you. You're not going to move. You're not going to try and change. You're stuck, stagnant. In the neuro-linguistic program, we called it, it's nominalized. Addiction, you've got control on some level. Even though I know you don't feel that you have control right now. I get it. In your darkest hours, you don't feel that you've got control. At 3 a.m. in the morning when you wake up wanting, needing, craving, jonesing to do your drug of choice, you don't feel you have a choice. I understand. You do, by the way. You do have a choice. Absolutely have a choice. Even though you don't feel it, understand it's just a feeling. Not discounting it. It's very strong. It's very, very strong. Most people run by the feelings. Not discounting it at all, but understand it's a feeling. It's not necessarily a reality. If you don't use your drug of choice, for the most part, all right, get your doctor's permission. As always, you're intelligent people, it goes without saying. But for the most part, if you miss your drug for a day, a week, a month, a year, the rest of your life, you're probably not going to die. Well, you are going to die, but you're not going to die of overdosing on that drug. You're going to die of natural causes. So that's where I stand on it. It's an addiction. Not discounting your feelings. Still quite very tough, very hard to overcome without the right tools. Okay? Disease keeps you stuck. Can't move. Why bother? Why even get up in the morning? I've got an addiction. Nothing's ever going to change. How does that help you? Doesn't. Addiction. All right, I'm addicting myself. I'm doing silly things in my brain and my body, even though I don't feel that I'm doing it deliberately. I'm doing something, otherwise I still wouldn't be here. Let me clean up all the emotions behind it, all the beliefs and all the memories that may have caused me to come to this place. Let me get connected to my higher power, if you believe in such a thing. Get connected to myself with loved ones, get the appropriate help. So that's where I fall, on that side of the sword. It's an addiction, not a disease. So if you've got any questions, please do put your questions in the comments below. Hey Ashley, how are you? If you're watching and you haven't said hello, give me a thumbs up now, give me a little bit of a wave. Oh, Shauna says you've got an amazing point of view on addictions. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's something that I've been doing for 23 years, so I've cultivated it, not by reading books and stuff that should work. I did that, read a bunch of books about what should work, and then when someone's jonesing in front of you having an epileptic fit, then you learn to do different things. You learn what works in the really real world. So I've been in the trenches with people like you, normal everyday people like you, to very successful celebrities that I can't name in case they try and sue me and they watch this, that didn't feel that they had a way out. You know, at the end of the day, they still shit and pissed and vomited all over themselves. From the normal average person like you and I, all to the big time celebrity who was worth hundreds of millions and had millions of admirers around the world. In the darkness of their addiction, they still shit, pissed and vomited all over themselves. So on some level, even though we think there's a gulf between us, we're actually not that similar. We're all a lot closer. Amanda says, as always, thanks for your videos. Thank you for watching, Amanda. Hey, and if you're watching these videos, if you are suffering from an addiction and you need some help, I'm going to leave a clickable link underneath for a screening call, which is a chat between you and I, where we can have a chat a little bit about your addictions, and I can tell you how potentially I could help you once I find out a little bit more about you. That'll be on the link below. Just click on it. If you know anyone that's suffering from addictions as well, that's ready, that needs a bit of help, but they're ready to start digging out of that hole, you know, I'm going to be there with that arm extended to them, as I'm sure you would be. Then please do refer this video to them. Do share this video with them, and hopefully, you know, it can help them start to move, you know, in the right direction. But yes, if you do have any questions after the fact, then do please put in the comments below. It's going to be on YouTube as well, and probably going to turn this into a podcast. So however you are choosing to consume this audio right now, this video right now, whether it be a podcast, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Facebook, whichever means you're doing it, hello to you, and put your comments on below. I'm sure there are going to be some people that will watch this. They won't watch it all the way through. They'll watch certain clips, and they'll be outraged. They'll be upset about it, but they'll take it out of context, because instead of, I don't know how long I've been on, 30 minutes maybe, instead of watching the 30 minutes and framed it how I framed it, they perhaps will get 5 seconds here or there and presume what I've said, rather than actually taking the whole context of this. But unfortunately, there are people like that will take things out of context. But such is life. As always believe.